everybody. Welcome back to another season of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic. I'm clearly rusty saying the word motorsports, but we are here. Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a great holidays. And Jordan, you survived Christmas, so that's one positive thing, I assume. How's it going there, Jordan?
Barely. Happy New Year to you. We're back, and I'm good. I can't complain. I will say Christmas actually went fairly decent, all things considered. I was there with a nice visit with my parents, which doesn't always be the case. I love you, Mom. Kidding. No, not about the loving part.
Kidding about the love, or
no? Moving on. Had a nice visit with them, stress-free, which is always nice. That was good. Let's just move on because I'm gonna get myself in a bigger hole here. And so, we've got things to talk about. Jeff, NASCAR decided to. We kind of heard some rumblings about some of this a little bit, about the DVP clock. We knew about the manufacturers. We were going to kind of be, there was going to be some enforcement to release manipulation and stuff like that. But there were some things unveiled this week that we didn't know about.
So let's first of all, we were talking about what we were going to do for our first podcast of the year, and we were like, I don't know. I mean, is it too early to do some preview type stuff? I mean, it's still kind of mid-January. There's still so much time, at least a few more weeks for season preview stuff to talk about what's going to happen this year. But then NASCAR dropped this flurry of rules changes this week, or Friday last week. And we got a lot of requests from you guys saying, please, we want to hear your take, all that on what you guys think, what happened here. One of the ones I wrote a column about on The Athletic, which obviously wasn't too happy about it. Let's just talk about that one first, because I'm not exactly entirely sure how you feel about it. We haven't really had a chance to debrief any of these. So what we'll do is we'll go through some of these rules, and then we'll just give our reaction to them. So I don't know if this is the headline for everybody, but it was certainly an eye-opener for me. This is called the Open Exemption Provisional. This is a new thing that NASCAR has dreamed up here, the OEP for short. So essentially, if a driver who has a big resume outside of NASCAR, so not NASCAR, so not Jimmy Johnson, not Martin Truex Jr. when we're talking about Daytona 500, they do not count. But if somebody wants to come in, an F1 driver, a, say, 4-time Indy 500 winner, Helio Castroneves, if they want to come in and do a NASCAR Cup Series race, great news for them. They don't have to worry about missing the show. NASCAR says if a team requests this OEP, the Open Exemption Provisional, at least 90 days before the event, so 3 months before, NASCAR will create a 41st starting spot in the 40-car field. Not quite adding Jeff Gordon to the chase type level, but I guess the person will be allowed to qualify. So let's just take Helio, because this is the real-life example happening now. Helio Castroneves is running the Daytona 500 for Trackhouse. He will show up in Daytona knowing that no matter what happens in qualifying and in the duels, he is in. Now, his team would like him to qualify his way in on his own, because if the OEP, the Open Exemption Provisional, is used and he needs the 41st starting spot in the field, they will not get any prize money, points, whatever. Now, not they need the points, it's Project 91. But they won't get any prize money, which is a big deal at Daytona, right? But he will be in the field. So you can sell this to your sponsors. You can say, hey, guess what? Lewis Hamilton wants to come run this race. And guess what? We don't have to worry about him missing the show. He's in because NASCAR is doing this obviously for publicity. They want the famous drivers, the celebrity drivers that are going to bring attention from other series to come in and have a spotlight on NASCAR. So your reaction to this, Jordan, what did you think when you heard about this?
I really see both sides of this. And when I first heard this, I was like, really? Is this really necessary? And I immediately thought of Fernando Alonso at the Indianapolis 500 and what that meant. and how the drama surrounding that of this Formula One champion coming over trying to qualify for this race, and he didn't do it. And it was like it was a huge storyline. It put a lot of attention, and it made IndyCar look better because here's Fernando Alonso coming over, and he failed to qualify. What's like, whoa, this isn't easy. This isn't just turning left and mashing the gas. Like there is a skill set to this, and you can't just hop on one of these cars and expect to be good no matter who you are. I think that's good for your series. I understand the thinking, and I don't like the fact. I think it's going to be, if it does happen, I think it's going to be weird that Castro Neves is in the Daytona 500, and theoretically, both Truex and Jimmy Johnson could miss the Daytona 500 this year because they're going to be in open cars. Expected to be, hasn't been announced yet. Both are expected to be at Daytona. That's a weird thing. Like you have these two, at least in Truex, I mean, both cases, recent NASCAR champions. Truex was a playoff driver last year, and he misses the race. And so that's not good. I don't think it's good. But the other side of that is it's not that different from when the provisional system was created back in the 80s. Richard Petty at the time was missing a lot of races. And NASCAR was like, hey, we need to have Richard Petty in these races. People coming off the racetrack to see him. This is selling tickets. This matters. And I get that. And the fact that the Project 91 isn't getting prize money and points, like, okay, I think that's a fair thing. If you're going to give them this provisional to get in the race, that's a selling point. And they're not taking away necessarily from another team. It's not their gain is not coming at the expense of another, which I think is really important. And so I get that. And I think it's important too, if you're going to do this, if you're Trackhouse and you're going to spend the money and invest all the resources into this and go and sign a driver like Castro Neves or whomever, I think I understand the logic of, hey, we want to be able to commit to this and be able to say like you're into this and it's not going to look bad. And so I go back and forth with this. And, the one thing I also think about too is qualifying at Daytona is different, and that, no offense to the drivers at Daytona, but we hear it all the time in qualifying. It's not them. It's the car. It's the engine. And so if this was like an Indy type situation where the driver can really make a difference in qualifying, I probably would have a lot stronger outrage about it than I am. Because at the end of the day, if Trackhouse Racing couldn't show up and they can't put together a fast enough car to out-qualify some of the cars that are in the open slots, that's on them. And so, I don't feel like it's an indictment on the driver. But I do look at this and I step back, and the one word I keep coming back to is unnecessary. Like, I just didn't feel like this was a thing that we needed to do. And it seems like there's kind of two camps. There's people that are they don't like this rule, and there's other people I've seen that like this rule. There doesn't really seem to be any middle ground. And I'm kind of in the middle, actually. I'm like one of the few people. I just feel like it's unnecessary, though. Like, you didn't need to do this, because if you look at the NASCAR schedule this year, there's two races. One for sure, the Daytona 500, where you're going to have guys go home in DNQ. Maybe Mexico City, depending on how that situation unfolds with entries, that kind of thing. But even then, I don't think that's going to be the case, because you have 4 open slots. I don't think you're going to get more than 4. It's expensive, that kind of thing. The purse payout for an open car isn't worth it. So really, it's only one race. And so it's like, you really need to implement a rule for this one race. I just didn't think you need to do that. I'm not up in arms about it, though.
So first of all, building on the point that you just made there, I looked up, and literally the only, since qualifying returned after the pandemic, the only race that anybody has been sent home from is the Daytona 500, as you mentioned. So a road course race, Max Verstappen wants to come run Chicago, whatever it would be, right? He's not going home. Nobody is being sent home from these road course races that a celebrity driver would want to come in. So it's really about the Daytona 500. That's what it seems like, right? And this is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And to me, it's also detracting from part of what makes the Daytona 500 special. The duels are fun, and it's exciting to see the reaction of who made it in, and oh my gosh, this person did this in the last lap of the duels, and this person did this, and qualifying as well. Oh, this person just locked in a spot. The emotion, the excitement, or on the other hand, the heartbreak, the setback. You missed it. It's part of the buildup to what makes the Daytona 500 NASCAR's biggest race. Now, imagine if Kyle Larson had said, hey, I'm thinking of running the Indy 500. Roger Penske and IndyCar goes, oh, Kyle Larson? He wants to come run the Indy 500? Let's do whatever we can to get him over here. We got to, he's in. He's in. We're going to make a spot for the Indy 500. Oh my, can you imagine? Can you imagine IndyCar and Indy 500 fans, the absolute meltdown? Because they don't want it with the new charter system that's coming.
They don't want guaranteed starting spots.
They don't want anybody to have a guaranteed starting spot. Anybody, let alone a celebrity famous driver from another series who has never turned a lap in their series, just because they say, oh, we want to come do this. You do? You want to come hang out with us? Oh, this is cool. Let's make sure you're in. That's crazy. Come on now. That makes you look less than. I don't think that's good for NASCAR. It's basically saying, it's screaming to Lewis, to Max, to Daniel Ricciardo, please come give us attention from the F1 fans.
But is that necessarily a bad thing though? Like if you put, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but again, you're not taking away a spot that's going to another team. This isn't an Indy 500 situation where you've got 33 revered spots, and that's it. This is NASCAR, where at different times, the Daytona 500 had like 50, 60, 50 cars start the race. Not too long ago, you had 43. So is adding a spot for a rare instance, is that a bad thing? And if it does open the door, let's be honest. I mean, Lewis and Max are not going to come run this race anytime soon. I'm confident in saying that. But if it opens the door at least a little bit, or you can maybe get somebody sort of that caliber, is that a bad thing though? I don't know if that is though. I mean, and I get the qualifying thing, but again, this isn't qualifying for the Daytona 500 is so different. And honestly, the drama of the duels it's still there to some degree, but it's not nowhere near what it once was. Like the duels used to be really special. The days when you had 60 some cars show up, and it was like you needed to race your way in. Yes, you get the Connor Daly moments. Yes, you get the Jimmy Johnson moment of a year ago where you had to make a last lap pass to get in, but it just still doesn't have that same drama. Is it horrible though if this is an opportunity for pick any name driver from Formula One or IndyCar, and they want to come run this? I don't know. I don't think it's that bad of a thing if you're trying to market your sport.
How could a real driver, a real racer like a Verstappen, look themselves in the face and go, yeah, you know what? I didn't want to do that race, but now that they're giving me a guaranteed spot so that I don't have to worry about failing, I don't have to worry about what happens if I don't make it, then I'm going to go do it. That is such backward logic. First of all, I don't think Max and Lewis want to run Daytona anyway. If they want to do a race, the open wheel racers around the world talk about, that stuff looks crazy. We don't want to do that. They would come run a road course race, which again, they're not going to be sent home from. There's not enough cars showing up.
It's unnecessary.
And if you did, let's say Checo, Sergio Perez got in a car for Mexico City, and there was 4 open cars and like 1 extra showed up, and they had to send 1 car home, and he did so bad that he didn't qualify. Well, do you think his fans would be like, oh, this is an outrage, NASCAR, you need to put him in? Or they go, well, he didn't
I do think there would be outrage. I mean, I do think there'd be people upset because we do see promoter provisionals. Like, this isn't an uncommon thing.
In short track, local short track things to get attention.
They're still out there. So prominent series use them. Prominent races use them. It's not, NASCAR for a long time, like, let's not forget, they had essentially this rule, which was the provisional rule, where you had a Darrell Waltrip and a Richard Petty and hell, even a Terry Labonte
after they'd contributed years and championships and wins to the sport. So these people have done nothing. They haven't even raced.
But Castro Neves is contributing this by he is bringing more attention. He is bringing more publicity. He's bringing all of these things. Like, there are going to be people, now I don't know what the numbers, but there are going to be people who are going to watch this race in Brazil or Castro Neves fans are like, hey, I want to see my guy race. Like, so they're
He'll come and
contributing.
qualify for the race. I'm not discouraging him from qualifying for the race. I think it's awesome that he wants to be in the race, but actually earn your way in, whether because you have a fast car in qualifying or you race your way in through the duels. Like every other person throughout NASCAR history has done it. Like
That's not true. That's not the case anymore because you have unproven rookies literally being handed rides. And we've seen this in others. You have literally unproven rookies being handed rides in chartered cars. They don't have to race their way in. They don't have to.
Okay.
But they just
and
have to show up. They're already
to.
guaranteed. So, like, if you're already guaranteeing spots to drivers who maybe don't have the merits, like, what's one more when, again, you're not detracting from somebody else? You're not taking it away from them and say, sorry, man. Sorry, Jimmy Johnson. You're not going to get this spot because it's going to Castro Neves. Sorry, Mike Wallace. You're not going to get this spot. Or BJ McLeod. Like, I would be outraged about this. I would be up in arms if they were saying, hey, we're capping the field at 40 like it's always been, or it's been in the recent years. And if Castro Neves doesn't get it, he's getting in and somebody else is out. You're not doing that. Hell, they're not even getting prize money. Like, you're not really out anything. This isn't really hurting anybody. And again, I don't necessarily like this. I don't think you needed to do this because I think it opens up a can of worms because there is a real scenario that it could exist down the road. What happens if you get 2 or more celebrity drivers entered in your race where you got to send guys home? How do you I would love to be in the room when you have to discern, like, oh, we're going to start picking apart resumes of these drivers saying, oh no, hey, everybody have a secret ballot and we're going to vote for this. That's the can of worms you open with this that I just didn't feel like it needed to be opened.
What else happens? What will the reaction be as well? And this is, maybe you can say this could happen to anybody, as you just did. But let's say you say, okay, X driver, congratulations, you're in the Daytona 500 field without even setting foot on property yet. You're in, don't worry about it. They come, they're kind of slow, they're not doing great, and then they get into the race and they cause the big one, and they therefore then affect NASCAR's playoff system. They didn't even earn their spot in the race to be there in the first place. They're sort of like this exhibition car for attention. And then they actually impact the NASCAR season in terms of playoff points, stage points,
you already get
race
that.
Winner. Huh?
You already get that to some degree. Like,
yeah, but they didn't even earn their spot in to do that. But you know what I mean?
I mean, let's be real though. I mean, Castro Neves is running the ARCA race for this reason. Like, it's to get experience and to get, lap times.
I'm not saying he's going to do it, but I'm just saying.
No, I understand.
I don't know what.
But there is a policy.
Celebrity.
There is going to be a thing of like you need to test. You probably do need to run the ARCA race. Like, you have to go. And if I think it's a fair conversation, if Castro Neves goes out in the ARCA race and it looks like a guy running on 2 wheels and can't complete a lap without crashing, like, it's a conversation we had of like, hey, what's going on here? But you would hope that if you're going to have a driver of this caliber, they're not going to embarrass themselves. And they're going to be in good equipment. And so, but, Travis Pastrana showed up, 2 years ago? Daytona 500, hadn't run a stock car. He had run a truck race in Vegas a few years ago before that, but he hadn't run a stock car at Daytona in a while and shows up and was fine. Now, I get it. And there's different scenarios. And I'm not trying to advocate for this rule. I'm really not. I just don't think that there needs to be this uproar about this. Like, and I just don't see why there has to be so angry. I get your thing, but this can happen any given weekend. I mean, you could put Castro Neves theoretically in a chartered car and he's guaranteed a spot. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's fine.
And so, but again, all of your things. Oh, he didn't earn his spot. He didn't earn his spot that way either. Like, he's being put in a chartered car. He's still not earning his spot.
That's NASCAR's system and their rules, though. They're changing the rule to add another spot just to get somebody in because they bring them attention. That's what I don't like about it.
I get it.
You go by the standards, and I guess this is a rule now, but I just don't like that this whole policy is being created just to get attention and publicity. I think it makes NASCAR look lesser instead of saying, hey, look how cool this is. And that's why I don't want NASCAR to be in that position. I want NASCAR to be like, dang, that's cool. Let's go try it. Let's see if we can compete. Let's see if we can win.
But it's not, again, if you show up at Daytona, it's not. Qualifying for the Daytona 500 isn't just about skill. I mean, it is so much about having the car and the engine. And if you can put down a good lap on your time trial, you're in. If you can be one of the top 2 speeds in the open, you're in. That isn't necessarily just about the driver. Like, it is so much about the car and the engine. This isn't a lot of other tracks. If this was another track where the driver really, I feel like, could make a difference, then it's a conversation worth having. But at Daytona, of all places, I'm not going to get upset by it. So, but
well,
you had a
while
great column, by
NASCAR,
the way.
what?
You wrote a great column, by the way. I recommend people reading that.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, while NASCAR has decided to encourage those from other series from coming over to their circuit, they have also decided to double down on discouraging their drivers from racing other series in a way that would skip one of their events. Maybe this is sort of the Kyle Larson rule, but the waiver rule has now been amended. You are already smiling. You must be so happy about
I
this.
just love hearing the word waiver come out of your mouth. It makes me so happy. It gives me such joy. When I heard about this, I immediately thought of you, and I'm like, I can't wait to hear the word waiver come out of Jeff's mouth, and I'm going to have a biggest smile on my face.
I thought of you smiling because I thought you must be very happy that NASCAR is trying to ensure that no driver will ever do to them what Kyle Larson did last
Fair.
year. So let's go through the rule. The first of all, a slight tweak to the wording here that I'm not sure was widely reported. Not only do you have to start all the championship events of the current season, so all races, all points races, but you must, this is new wording, quote, attempt to complete all of the races. So in other words, I think they're trying to make it so, like, if I'm reading it correctly, you can't start the race, get out, and then go run the Indy 500. If there was some sort of conflict, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta be in the car the whole time. You better not leave, or else you need a waiver for that. And okay, so this is the new part. You can still get a waiver, but if they give you a waiver for a playoff and it's for anything other than a medical reason or age restriction, or medical reason can also be like a family emergency, birth of a child, whatever. But if it's for anything other than that, you lose all of your playoff points. And not only all of the playoff points that you've gotten so far, but all of your playoff points for the entire season. So you will start the playoffs with 0 playoff points. 0. You could win the regular season title. It won't matter. You could win 7 races. You won't get playoff points for any of them. Because if you miss a NASCAR race and you need a waiver because of it, and it's not for medical reasons, you are screwed. What do you think of this rule?
I want to hear what you think of the rule. That's what I really want to think. I think it's a good rule. I have no problem with it. I think if you're committed to this, then you need to be committed to this. And you should, you want to go moonlight somewhere and do some stuff, that's great. But at the end of the day, you need to be here for what you signed up for, especially in instances when you sit there and tell us, oh, you're the priority. Oh, you matter most to us. Oh, at the end of the day, yeah, we want to be there for you, and we're going to be there for you. And then when push comes to shove, you're like, no, sorry, got to go. Got another date. Sorry. It doesn't work like that. I have 0 issues with this. Sorry, please go.
I do not, now that it's in writing, I don't have a problem with this being the policy going forward, right? So, but if they had stripped Larson's playoff points last year, made him playoff ineligible, which, remember, they were considering these options.
That was serious.
That would have been terrible. That wasn't in the rule book. Now it's in the rule book.
Yeah.
So Larson is going to go to Indianapolis for the 500, and he's going to know this is it. This is the rule. Like, maybe I don't even know if they give him a waiver, but if they did give him a waiver,
I ain't getting a waiver this time, man.
Yeah, they'd say, but let's say he missed it. Let's say he was on his way back and the plane had a mechanical failure or something. Like, he was trying to get there, and so he got a waiver because of that. But you're losing your playoff points. Everybody knows the deal. You're losing your playoff points, period. Okay. So that's fine. That's out there. Now here's the one wrinkle that is a little bit concerning to me. I think I like it, but I'm just a little bit nervous about it.
Suspension.
And how it'll go. The suspension part.
Yeah.
So let me back up by saying, I think I like this. So the rule is, so right now, suspensions have generated waivers, right? Like, you get suspended for an off-track a crime, you're getting a waiver. You get suspended for right rear hooking a driver, intentional wrecking. You're getting a waiver for that, right? Like Chase Elliott, he gets a waiver when he wrecks somebody on purpose, whatever. So now what they're saying is, and this is where it's going to get, this could be dicey.
This changes the thinking a little bit and how maybe they assess penalties going forward.
That's what I'm worried about, because right now I think last year, I think they had taken a step, beyond the boys have at it stuff, right? Like they said, okay, listen, we don't want intentional wrecking here. We don't want this. Like we'll park you, we'll do this. And we're laying down the law here. If everybody knows that a suspension now means that you lose all your playoff points for season, one heated moment of anger on the track, which is bad.
Yeah.
But that caused you to miss a race the next week as a punishment, you are screwed for the playoffs. So first of all, I mean, that's a big penalty, because that's not just missing a race. That is your season is over for this one idiotic thing you did, which
your season's not over.
You can say it's, well, you're going to start with 0 playoff points.
Your season's not over, though. I mean, like, we just saw Joey Logano win the championship as a 15 seed or whatever it was. I mean, like, your season's not over. You're put in a big hole. You're put in a very big hole.
Number 2, is NASCAR going to be, are they going to be able to follow through on this, right? Like, are they going to say, hey, sorry, you right rear hooked a guy. That is a suspension, in line with how we've been doing it. We've been suspending people for this. That's another one. Sorry, I don't care if it was popular driver or whoever. We're suspending you, and this is your punishment. And now you're in a big hole. Like, I don't want to see any inconsistency as a result of the gravity of the suspension part of this rule. Is that fair?
It's very fair. And I don't want to speak for NASCAR here, but I think their messaging over the last few years has been, if you right rear hook somebody, especially on a fast track, a mile and a half type racetrack, you're going to there's a penalty, and it's going to be significant. And they have a pattern now of suspending guys. I don't know how you deviate from that. When you have made it a very big issue, it's a safety issue, right? We can't have this on these kind of fast tracks at Las Vegas or Charlotte. How can you say that over the last few years and been consistent about that, and then all of a sudden come back and say, no, we're not going to suspend anybody, and here's why? It's like, no, if it's a safety issue then, it's a safety issue now. And so it should be that clear cut. I hope it remains that clear cut. I do like the fact that there's more teeth now in a suspension than before. Maybe you could argue that it's probably a little too much, and maybe there's a different way to, maybe you could say all of your playoff points up until this point. But then again, if you do that, a suspension in August is much more impactful than a suspension in February after 2 or 3 races, So I don't know how you do that. I really don't mind this. I really don't. I'm fine with this, as like you said, as long as the enforcement continues for on-track violations when you hook somebody and send them in the wall, and which is a deliberate thing. As long as that doesn't change, I have no issues with this.
I mean, the other thing too is, like, let's say this is a driver that wasn't in the playoffs or didn't have any playoff points anyway, or wasn't, really thinking they're going to make it, right? Like, the penalty for them is not very big to be suspended and lose your playoff points. They're like, I don't care. Like, they'll get suspended for a race. They care about that. But the penalty for a contending top driver is incredibly severe. I mean, there was debate about, should people be suspended 2 races for doing something like that? No, that's too harsh. Well, what would you rather be suspended for, 2 races or lose all of your playoff points if you're a championship contender? That is devastating. It could be.
It could be, but I don't know how. Again, I don't know how you walk that back, though. I mean, if you have somebody right rear hook somebody out of Vegas or Kansas or Charlotte, or pick any of the bigger tracks where the speeds are, coming off a turn forward and the speeds are high, how you go back and say, oh, we're not going to suspend? I don't know how you can ever justify that, considering what happened to Chase and what happened to Bubba, and the consequences and the potential ramifications that hasn't changed. The only thing that changes your policy on points and stuff that should impact safety at all. And so I would hope that's going to continue to be applied going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And like, again, I feel like
it does open the door for it though.
Yeah. It's just kind of crazy to think like something could happen in the spring Phoenix race where somebody like gets mad for a second and that is helping decide the championship next time they get back to Phoenix. It's just weird.
There's a hypothetical here, and this is maybe a little bit taking it far, but this is a hypothetical. Pick any driver, they win early in the year at like a Las Vegas or something, right? And they lock themselves in. Well, sometime in the spring, they do something dumb and get suspended a race. So they're effectively, doesn't matter what they do in the regular season championship, doesn't matter about bonus points or anything like that. They know what they're starting at come the playoffs. It completely changes your mindset the rest of the year if you're this team. You're no longer racing for stage points and bonus points and trying to win the regular season championships. I mean, I guess effectively all you want to do is win as many races as you can because that's what you want to do and that's what you race for. But it does change your thinking because now in, let's say, a fuel mileage race in Indianapolis or Pocono or really anywhere, anytime there's a gamble and you've got to make a decision, are we going to go for the win or are we going to play it safe? They're going to go for broke because they've got nothing.
They don't care about points at all.
Which the domino effect from that then could be
that could alter the outcome of races. Yeah. That's a great point.
And so that's the interesting thing. And like, I'm just going to throw Kyle Larson's name out there. If you're Kyle Larson, you're like, hell, I'm just going to go race every week. I'm either going to win or I'm going to crash. Like, it'd be great to watch, but the domino, the butterfly effect from that, it would be fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it encourages like the Joey Logano type Hail Mary fuel strategy where people are going in there, like this guy that has already been suspended and can't get any playoff points. He's running 15th and he's like, well, like literally it does not matter what happens in this race to me.
No.
Like if I either win and get a trophy, which doesn't matter for playoff points anyway, but hey, I got to win. So then that again, as you said, the butterfly effect of that is impacting the rest of the field and the rest of the season. And it's very interesting. By the way, as part of this, it's a great point, Jordan. As part of this, NASCAR did put in wording that says the decision to grant or decline a playoff waiver request and the subsequent loss of playoff points is final and non-appealable. So you can't take that to the appeals board. They're put in there.
Maybe federal court, though. I mean, at this point, anything is going before a federal judge.
We'll see. Jordan, another big headliner from the rules changes is the revamp of the DVP policy. Obviously, I think that was in one of our low moments of the year when we were doing the podcast. We talking about the towing and all this stuff and the flat tires and all those things. It's going to be much more streamlined now, and to me, much fairer and much clearer. Let's get into this. So, as you know, before, if you had damage, crash damage, you couldn't drive it back, whatever, you're out of the race, period, right? Like if you couldn't drive it back, if you get out of your car, you're done. So, and also if you went to try to fix your damage and you exceeded the 7-minute damage repair clock, you're also done. So those things have been changed. The DVP policy now is you can go to the garage. You don't go to your garage stall. You'll go to a designated garage repair area, which is sort of like, this is how they do it in dirt.
Yeah.
Right. Like you pull off and you have, X amount of time and whatever to make your repairs. So you'll be doing in this designated repair area out in the open, I guess. And you have as much time as you want. So it's like the old policy, right? If something happens, you get a crash, your team can go to work, you can return to the race 30 laps down with repaired car or whatever it is. Now, if you do try to go to pit road to make sure you can try to do this and not lose a lap and stay on the lead lap or whatever, and there's still going to be a 7-minute clock for that. However, if you exceed the clock, you're not out of the race. You just have to go to the garage. And the rule is if you exceed the clock, no matter what, you got to go to the garage first before you come back to the track. And you will have one attempt to meet minimum speed after you've gone to the garage for repairs of any kind. Now, the last wrinkle here before I get your reaction, Jordan, if you get towed, if you have to get towed, so the tow, obviously that with the next gen car, that is still exists as a problem. Like flat tires can still be a problem. But instead of like, okay, hey, why am I out of the race just because I had flat tires? Like, this is ridiculous. Josh Berry or whatever, right?
There's Briscoe, Chase Elliott.
Yeah.
List goes on.
You can now, you will now be towed. You will still be towed to the garage. If you can't drive it back, you will be towed to the garage, but you're not out of the race, right? They'll tow you to the repair area. So it would be a very unfortunate for you in the sense that like Josh Berry in his situation would have been towed, through the campground or whatever it was. He would have been towed back to this garage area, but then they just would have put four tires on and he would have gone back to the race 5, 6, 10 laps down or whatever. It's still not great,
but it's better than what it was for him.
Right. You'd still be in the race at least.
Yeah.
You still have a chance to pick up positions, to pick up points. So, what do you think of all that there?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I thought it got really baffling and perplexing last year and how this was enforced. And it seemed like, you had Ryan Blaney at Watkins Glen, you had the Josh Berry thing, and then you had everything that transpired at Talladega with the cars being damaged, being towed back, and that kind of thing. This feels much more straightforward. I really don't have any issues with this. The one thing I've kind of exchanged a few messages with crew chiefs the last few days about this is when NASCAR went away from cars going to the garage to make repairs, teams kind of like that because they didn't have to bring crash carts as much. They didn't have to bring, we hear a lot of this sounds silly, but hot fluids on the car and it ruined uniforms and that kind of thing. And teams kind of like this because it kind of helped them police themselves from having to make all these repairs. And also it eliminated to some degree, especially at Daytonas and Talladegas and the like, of having cars on the track or dropping debris. And so I'm a little, I'm curious to see what the teams have said. The crew chiefs are kind of mixed bag on this. Some of them are like, hey, I want this back. I want to be able to dictate my fate. If I've got a flat tire or some minor damage, I think I should be able to fix it and get it back out there. If like a Ryan Blaney's got suspension damage at Watkins Glen, like give me a chance to fix this and get back out there. Our day shouldn't be over, and neither should Josh Berry's. Other crew chiefs are like, I wasn't fine with the rule. I just wanted consistent enforcement with this, and I wasn't happy. I was unhappy with kind of the gray area that we were treading into, where some cars were being allowed to get towed back and damage and this and that. And that's what they were upset. It's like, if you just enforce the rule how it is, that's fine. And I'll abide by it, but don't have this, this gray area, this middle area that we're kind of hedging into. So largely though, I'm okay with it. It seems straightforward and I think it'll be good. We'll see how it works. I'm sure I know there's going to be some wrinkle out there that we don't think about or no one's thought about yet. And it's going to happen at some point. We're going to be like, oh man.
Yeah. I think this is a win overall. Let the teams decide whether they can continue in the race. If they feel like, it's worth trying to get back out there 40 laps down to pick up a point or two, if you can, let them decide that. That's fine. And, the towing thing as it continues to be sort of this unresolved thing, I just want to see that consistent then, like, because if a car can't drive it back, don't tow them to their pit stall then.
Yeah.
Like tow them to this area in the garage. Like, I don't want to hear about at Daytona 500. Well, they got towed to their pit stall and we just changed 4 tires and now we're back out, where these other person, they just had 4 flat tires. They had to go to all the garage. They lost laps. Like you really got to be fair about it now.
Consistent. You got to be consistent about this.
Yes. Now, the one thing too is this will, seemingly, undoubtedly, unquestionably create more cautions, right? Because let's say after a big one or whatever, you're going to have multiple cars out there that are dropping debris, as you mentioned, or leaking fluids. I don't think NASCAR hates that though. Like, I think there's a lot of times when they say, oh, we want more cautions. We want more restarts. We want more unpredictability. So, I think NASCAR is like, okay, oh, too bad. There's more cautions. Oh, darn. I think some fans might be upset and some drivers be like, dang it. Like, last year, this wouldn't have been a thing. Like, this car came back into the race and now they dropped something on the track. Now there's got to be a caution and now there's bunch up the field and this ruins my fuel strategy from Daytona. But again, I don't think NASCAR wants all the strategy stuff at Daytona and Talladega anyway. Right. Like, so they don't want green flag runs. They want to see restarts. So I think that's what you're going to get. there's probably, going to be more yellow flags, but I do think it's fine. And it's good to have the team say, okay, let's look over the car. Like there was too much being left, like the Ryan Blaney thing at Watkins Glen, where, he had some sort of damage maybe, but they didn't know what it was. They're already out of the race. And it's like, man, we didn't want, like give us a chance to look at it at least. So now you'll have that. So I think that's fair.
It's fine. It's in a lot of respects, it's kind of going back to the old way of teams going to be able to go to the garage and make repairs, but still incorporating some element of the caution of the DVP clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So manufacturer penalties. We obviously knew this was coming after the Martinsville mess last fall, but now it's in writing here. So you if a manufacturer is involved in doing something that NASCAR deems illegal, so this could be violation of the testing policy. If NASCAR's like, wait a minute now, Chevy pulled a fast one here, and with testing or whatever. Wind tunnel policy, the rosters, right? Like that's a thing. The rosters are limited, and they have to file the rosters for each event. So is there some funny business there? And the code of conduct, which overall is, encompasses a lot of things. The penalties could be a loss of manufacturer points, a loss of wind tunnel hours. You could have somebody from the manufacturer ejected or suspended. So, they have some options now to hold the manufacturers accountable where they really didn't before. And to me, this seems like kind of a no-brainer. Honestly, I think it's a very good thing to be able to say. I mean, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. To me, I can't believe that this wasn't already in the rule book, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing to me, is like, how did you not have the ability to handle things however you decide to handle them before? And then it was that's what to me came out of Martin. So I was like, you can't penalize the manufacturers? What like really?
Yeah. And I think to me, like the manufacturer points is a big one. Because if you tell the manufacturers, listen, you're not going to do this. You're not going to do this race manipulation stuff. And we're pretty serious about this. And you know how you like to brag that you were the manufacturer's champion this year or whatever, in whatever series. We're going to take away so many points that you just blew it because you tried to make us look dumb, and you tried to make a mockery of our sport. So we're not going to do that. That's what NASCAR would be saying. So I hope there'll be a lot of politics in I hope they are able to follow through.
Wind tunnel time too is something. Don't sleep on wind tunnel time too. Like that's, they'll tell you, like trust me, that's important.
Absolutely. Similarly, what kind of goes along with this, whatever the 100% rule was, but by the way, let's just back up for a minute on the 100% rule, right? This came out of MWR Spingate. The very next week, Brian France and officials called the drivers to the Xfinity Series garage at Chicagoland Speedway. And, he said, you have to race at 100% of your ability at all times, or, we're going to penalize you, whatever. Right. And this was 2013. This rule was never well thought out policy. This was a reaction to something that happened the week before. And it was like, yeah, we're going to put this in. You got to race 100%. And so there's been so many examples over the years where people say, well, wait a minute. He let his teammate get back on the lead lap, or he did this, or he did. And it's like, well, that's not 100% rule. The whole thing was never, again, it was never meant to be what it sounded like. So now they've changed the wording here. The wording did say, in terms of member obligations, you cannot take action with the intent to artificially alter the finishing positions. Now the language is more specific. It is attempts to manipulate the outcome, talking about the race. Okay. Yeah. So it's not just even one finishing position or whatever. It's, you can't manipulate the outcome of the race. That's in the rule book. That's how they spell it out. Any reaction there?
No, it's fine. The 100% rule was always convoluted, never made sense, because if your objective is to win the race, sometimes that means not going 100% at the time. It means letting everyone else go 100%. and letting them blow an engine or, running out of their strategy or whatever that is. So if the objective is to win the race, you do that in different ways. And I am shocked would come up with a rule or say something that didn't make a lot of sense. That just seems very unlike Brian France.
Well, everybody makes mistakes, Jordan.
He's made a few.
Some people just make a lot. Anyway, so there's just a few more minor things that I was looking through here. I looked at every single rule before we came on, just again to make sure that I wasn't missing something. A few more things jumped out that we can just talk about real quick, cleaning up the minutia here. Fines, they will be assessed now to the team owner / organization of record rather than the crew chief. In the past, something happened and be like, and then the crew chief's fined $50,000. But then everybody's like, they're not really paying it. Yep. The team's going to pay it for them. So now in the rule book, it just says they're fining the team owner / organization. So that's fine. Great and fine, right? I mean,
it just clarifies something that we already knew. Whatever.
Here's one I spotted that I don't even know if this has been out there. If it is, I apologize. Somebody found this and tweeted it. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't think I am. So this is under the caution procedures for the race. The new rule says vehicles purposefully not maintaining reasonable speed as determined by NASCAR will be assessed a tail of the field penalty. Now, before, I'm pretty sure if you did not maintain your reasonable speed, you just got where you blended back in, you got that spot. So maybe you lose 3 spots and they say, you were going to put you 10th or whatever, right?
Yeah, remember Marcus Ambrose at Sonoma? That was the probably the most well-known one.
When he was going up the hill, cut his car off. Yeah. So now they're saying they say purposefully, and I don't know if that was purposefully, but if you're trying to save fuel, basically.
That's purposely though. That's the thing. And to me, that's the big thing of this is that this is where this rule applies. Is so many times drivers will try to save fuel by cutting off
down on the apron. You're going slow.
And sometimes very slow. Greg Biffle at Kansas, right? And so this is going to be one of those things where NASCAR is going to have to make a call, and you're going to have to be consistent with it. And if you're consistent with it and you're truly going to enforce this, great. If you're not, and this is going to be one of those things that's going to blow up and be a controversial thing, and it's every week, it seems like it's a different ruling, then we're going to have problems.
You old heads know what I'm talking about this, but the Greg Biffle at Kansas that Jordan just mentioned, I was sitting in the press box for that. I maintain to this day that reasonable speed was not maintained. Greg Biffle should not have won that race. That was an absolute travesty. That was a bad call. And NASCAR was so insistent that he maintained reasonable speed. I mean, he did not maintain reasonable speed. What are you talking about? He slowed down. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Didn't Clint Boyer finish second in that race too?
Yeah, he would have wanted his home track.
Track, and he never won his home track. And to this day, so if you're upset by it, Clint Boyer, I promise you, is more upset by it.
Yeah. This is a minor one, but it's something that I just want to read real quick because I think it could come into play potentially, right? And everybody will just know it. We'll just read it real quick. So suspensions, when you get suspended as a result of a technical penalty. So not the behavioral stuff, that suspend a crew chief or whatever, right? And they say, all right, well, unless you appeal this, you're out for the next week. You're that race, right? Well, now you can defer it for one race. So the crew chief the team can essentially pick. They say, well, we don't want them to be out here at this race. This is a more important race than the next week. So we can kind of choose which one they want to miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
It was kind of that way before too, because of the appeal system and how the appeal system was set up, where we saw it many times where an infraction would occur, a crew chief would get suspended, and a team would be like, hey, we're going to appeal this because we want our crew chief here this weekend or something like that. And then come Monday, Tuesday, oh, by the way, we're yanking
we drop the appeal.
We're dropping the appeal and we're going to okay. So it's semantics largely. It's whatever. This doesn't really change anything. It's just,
but it is a great point that, you now you don't have to file, you don't have to go through the charade of filing the appeal that you're going to lose just to get your crew chief at that race or whatever. So that that's a great point, and that makes sense to me. that is all the new rules. However, one rule that was put into the rule book formalized, I think we already talked about it on one of our last podcasts, the qualifying. Then we talked about qualifying going to one round already.
Yes, we talked about
that podcast. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but just to recap, if you missed it, if you didn't know, qualifying has been changed now. No more group qualifying kind of deal. Like at most tracks, it's now 1 round, 1 lap. At short tracks, it is 1 round, 2 laps. And so, it's the old kind of qualifying, right? Like it's just where you draw, where you line up. You could catch a cloud. You could, the track conditions could change. Okay, well, that's just part of the deal. There's no more knockout qualifying. No more at the ovals. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just how it is. So I think that everybody likes that. It was getting too complicated. So that is now that language is now formalized in the rule book. That wasn't in the rule book before. So that was part of this bulletin as well.
The one thing that hasn't been said yet is changes to the playoff format. And we don't know if any changes are going to come to that or not, but that is expected if something is to happen later this month.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that. I asked NASCAR specifically, okay, the playoff, there was no format changes in this bulletin. So does that mean that there's nothing coming? And I was told not to read into it either way, as you said. So could still happen, maybe won't still happen. We don't know. But this rules change bulletin and not being included in that doesn't indicate either way, we're told. So that is where we stand now. Well, Jordan, I guess we'll get to the preview stuff with the next podcast and start to, assuming there's no more major news coming before then. So everybody, thanks so much as always for listening. Good to be back with you. We will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody.